Oh yeah, it looks a little purple, but I the laptop or camera lighting or lens on it, so it should be all right though.
Cool. Purple is the color of recovery.
It is the color of recovery. That is absolutely right. Welcome to Rock and Recovery. I'm your host, Jay, and today I've got a special episode with a special guest. His name is Mark. I'm not even going to try to butcher his last name because I sure in the hell cannot pronounce it. But I will let him do that after this little short introduction from him. But here we are. We just like to bring hope to everybody else out there in addiction, struggling with addiction or mental health. I just like to bring a little bit of hope. And for me, hope means hold on, pain ends. So, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and I'll just let you go jump into your story from there.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm Mark Ehrenkranz, and I was in the movie business for a long time, and I made a documentary called Addiction Warriors, and I had some frustration with it, so I kind of put that career on the shelf. And then I went back to school, and I became a certified peer recovery specialist. I've been in recovery since 1985. I first got clean and sober then. I was 25. I'm now 65. So I've
Wow.
been practicing recovery for almost 40 years, not linear, so that 22 years in, I herniated some disc in my neck. They gave me a supposed non-narcotic called tramadol, which I checked out with addiction psychiatrists and everything. Everybody said I'd be fine. Well, I took it. I got high. Wow, this is great. License to use. I'm using the prescription. I'm in pain. Cool. Kept taking it. Really, made me, I don't know if it helped with the pain, but it certainly made me feel good. And then, of
Oh,
course,
absolutely.
yeah. And then, I mean, my opioid receptors, they were just so hungry for that. And then, as we know, it works really well until it doesn't. So that I built up a tolerance, and then I wanted my machine to go from 60 to 100. So then I started to seek opioids, and then there was no Oxycontin or oxycodone. So I was stealing Vicodin and Percodan from my dad's medicine cabinet. And then I was a benzo addict originally. So I conned immediate care psychiatrists, quack doctors for Xanax. And I was off to the races for 3 years, grown children, marriage, business, my movie career is going great. And I'm slipping and sliding and, you know, uh, girls and drugs. And I was like 16 years old again. So flash forward, I cleaned up 8, 9 years back into recovery, practicing AA, smart recovery, noble steps, and yeah, secular Buddhism. And then at the end of making Addiction Warriors, I met this guy, D. Jaffe, and he wrote this book, The Abstinence Myth. And I had never really heard about harm reduction. So he said, yeah, Mark, man, I enjoy a little weed now and then. Well, that's all he had to tell me. So I was in San Francisco. I went to the dispensary. I said, CBD only. Went home, took a hit. Boom, I got so high. I had a great time. I ate a lot of food, came back to the hotel. I pleasured myself, and then I was again 5 years of going to the dispensary, spending oodles of cash. As we know, the cannabinoid receptors and the chemistry now, it basically renders the medication I was taking, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Cymbalta, Wellbutrin, useless. So what happened? I had to smoke all the time because I was crying and I couldn't stop crying, and I got depressed. And then I got so depressed that I didn't think life was worth living. Next thing I know, my wife calls the police, ambulance pulls up, and I'm taken to the hospital. Actually, at the hospital where I work now, in the
Wow.
psych ward where I work. So again, I cleaned up. I got a bunch of years. I now work at a 1,000-bed hospital. I'm the only peer recovery specialist. I go bedside every day. Actually, now only Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's another story, which I can tell you. And I try to do my peer recovery thing, get vulnerable and be honest, radically honest, and and motivate them to get into recovery. And I'm the only one in the hospital that can talk to them straight up, because the doctors, they say you should do this, you should do that, but often patients have that fight, flight, or freeze, and they're afraid of the stigma. They're going to be stigmatized. These people are going to be judgmental, and they just yes them to death. So I come in and I, help facilitate medically assisted treatment, harm reduction, pathways of recovery, peer recovery centers, all of the modalities, and that's what I'm doing now. And I can tell you that I started to write some books, haven't written some screenplays in my career. Um, but Jay, I've been blabbering, so you may want to jump in.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you some questions anyway. Like early in recovery, what were some of the triggers, and how did you manage those triggers early in recovery?
Yeah, so I was a benzo addict and a garbage head, and so I ended up in St. Barnabas Hospital in Livingston, New Jersey, and detox. And then the doctor said to me, would you consider rehab? No, that's for drug addicts and losers, and so I went.
Right.
It was the best, experience of my life. And I went to aftercare and I started to go to AA. I went to NA. And at that point, I think I had partied for a lifetime. That's what I told myself. And I sort of blew up my Hollywood career and I was hoping to get it back. So I was very motivated to stay clean and sober. And at that time, there was no anything to ease it along. I didn't have an opioid use disorder, so there was no buprenorphine. Um, so exercise, meetings, spiritual practice, all of those things I really practiced every day. So there really weren't cravings.
What are some of the dangers of the benzo addiction? What does it exactly do to your mind, and psychosis? Is there a psychosis that goes along with it? And how hard is it actually to kick that habit?
Yeah, no psychosis for me. Everybody's different. I took it. I got energized. I was ready to soar and fly, And I love the shit. My father was a benzo addict. My grandmother was a benzo addict. I used to steal from them. I worked at St. Barnabas in the junior high. Would take the IV and put it in my ass, 10 milligrams of Valium. I fucking love this stuff. So, I gave it up. They put me on a medication then. It was called Cerax. It's sort of a Ativan kind of, another benzo. And benzo spared me down. So there wasn't a big withdrawal. However, they told me benzos are really hard to get off of. Just like nicotine, we feel these are the two hardest things to get off of. And that it may take, we know the benchmarks now are 6 months, 2 years, 5 years for complete brain, reset. It may take a bunch of years till your brain resets. And so it was weird. I would kind of feel it and there's these sensations and things, but I really got into fitness, and that's what I had done in high school, and I that was my thing. I made movies, and I did well in track, and so that was easy for me to pick that up as a big form of my recovery and meetings and big book and steps and exploring other avenues of spirituality. So I
So
really,
AA worked for you, or was it AA or NA?
uh, you know, I went to a lot of NA. Maybe I was going to the wrong meetings. They were a little rough for me. I dug that because it was radically honest, But I found more time in AA, and at that time everybody smoked cigarettes and drank coffee, so that was a little rough. But I'm Jewish, so when I was introduced to the Our Father, it was fucking weird, Jay. I was like, oh my God,
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be struck by God. I'm saying the Our Father, But I was taught that the whole trick is becoming more comfortable with discomfort. So that was uncomfortable. So there was a victory in that. It went from 0 to 1, the largest distance, So I kept doing it. And then I learned to love AA and the wisdom that Bill, Bob, William James, Carl Jung wrote the big book, and the wisdom and the 12 and 12 wisdom is like genius. So I really dug it, and I learned the history, and I felt a part of. And, today I identify as, a person with a substance use disorder. But at a meeting of AA, I say, I'm an addict and alcoholic because I want to feel a part of. I don't want to alienate anybody else. That's sort of the anthem there, right? So I have no problem. My ego has been sublimated, and I always feel that there's a victory in doing something you're uncomfortable with, and we can talk more about that because that's what I teach now.
What exactly does uncomfortable mean? Being ready to be uncomfortable, or getting uncomfortable, or comfortable being uncomfortable. What does that mean, actually?
Okay, so I teach now, and this is what I learned. I can answer the question. It's called Navy SEAL recovery. It's not what you think, because they don't.
Navy SEAL recovery.
It's not what you think. That's the
I
slogan.
was gonna, I was gonna say that sounds kind of rough around the edges to me.
Hardcore, right? So
Very
we have to
disciplined.
say it's not what you think, because they don't throw Navy SEALs into the ice cold water to teach them how to swim in cold water. It's to teach them how to breathe. And this is what I teach. And I teach the doctors that humans are coded for survival. So a lot of humans, especially in active addiction, are in that fight, flight, or freeze sympathetic nervous system. Up, chest up, shallow breathing, modern threats, fight, flight, or freeze. Leave me the fuck alone. Let me do what I want. I'm not hurting anybody. Escape, drink, 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 smoke, smoke, smoke. Freeze, isolation. I don't feel good enough. Let me just party and use in my room, and most humans are that way. We're driving, we're not thinking. It's the incessant thinking machine, the broken record of the same fucking thoughts all the time, you know. So there's a thing. It's kind of in vogue now, It's called vagal toning. So, and a lot of therapists are teaching somatic therapy. So, the real quick, the vagus nerve goes from here, close to the throat, and then it's the largest nerve in our body. It controls the entire central nervous system, autonomic somatic
Okay.
system. Okay, it's vagus means wanderer in Latin, and it basically controls our feelings. So when you have a pit in your stomach, that's a feeling. And then we try to learn what those were because I had no idea to assign it with an emotion. I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm afraid. So by toning the vagus nerve, just like the Navy SEAL, by diaphragmatic breathing in your belly for 1 minute, just 1 minute every day. Set your alarm on your cell phone to repeat every day. It goes off at noon or whenever you think is a good time, and you just breathe in your belly. So now you massage your vagus nerve with your diaphragm, and you're breathing, and you're out of your shoulders, and you're out of your head, and it's now time, and you're just breathing. And that's the first thing. So that's what Navy SEALs learn because they can't panic. They can't be in the sympathetic nervous system. And the
So it's
second
kind
thing
of like a neck massage yeah, I know how comfortable a neck massage is. So it's basically doing the same thing as you're hitting your vagus nerve.
boom. So because the vagus nerve is right here, when people used to sing, hum, or chant, there was science to it. Just like your neck massage, you're working out the vagus nerve, you're toning it, just like the push ups, just like recovery. It's conditioning like the Navy SEAL. And you can I gargle in the morning after I brush my teeth every morning, aggressively for 1 minute. It tones the vagus nerve. Yep. And they actually make a little thing. It goes around your neck, gives you slow impulses, which keeps you chill all day. And because they realize that IBS, IBD, all those GI distresses, they are directly affected by the vagus nerve. And we know anxiety, other things give those folks, GI issues. And when they begin to tone the vagal nerve, they quiet down because the parasympathetic nervous system, the opposite of the fight, flight, or freeze, is restoration, relaxation, and digestion. And I practice that. The last component is, in your question, inflicting a little discomfort on ourselves so that we become more uncomfortable with discomfort. So we're practicing that when somebody pisses us off or we're dysregulated for whatever reason, the boss asked us to come into the office, or I got cut off on the road, or whatever these things are, that we can now regulate and know what it's like to be uncomfortable in that situation. And now we're more comfortable with the discomfort physically, psychologically, and we train our bodies on a cellular level to
Hmm.
regulate and rewire. And that's basically it.
So, along with that being the uncomfortable part, when do you start being comfortable again? When to start after you just got into recovery? For everybody out there, you just got into recovery, you're trying to kick a habit. When does life start going back to normal? I mean, and when I say the normal, I say societal normal because the only setting I know is the washing machine has a normal setting, the drying machine has a normal setting. So, societal normal, when does that start coming back? Your feelings and emotions and regulation and everything like that. Sleep, even. When does your sleep patterns come back?
Oh my God. Yeah, totally, Jay. So the answer is everybody's different, right? Entirely different. A young person can kick fentanyl, do Suboxone or Sublocade is the shot. This is a miracle because people, I don't want to get on Suboxone again, Subutex. It's the worst withdrawal, buprenorphine, right? I say, we'll give you a shot once a month. You can do it 4 to 6 weeks. Now we go to 7 weeks, 8 weeks. We begin reducing it, and there's no withdrawal. Plus, the Sublocade takes you out of the habit of taking something. I love taking shit, even over the counters. So everybody's different. So I think the answer, there are benchmarks, scientific, because we know it's science now. The brain gets hijacked. It's not a moral failing, or it can be part genetic or nature nurture, but the benchmarks are 6 months of abstinence, right? Not moderation management, not smoking a little weed at night, not California sober, right? There's a place for that. However, this is abstinence, and the brain begins to heal. 6 months, get your marbles back. I remember back in the day, they would give us little marbles because I would begin to get my marbles back. And then year, 2 years, 2 years is a big benchmark. So throughout
Hmm.
that time, you're uncomfortable, but we say, keep in touch with your network, use your network, socialize, go to community recovery meetings, SMART, Noble Steps, whatever speaks to you. That's the oxytocin in the formula. And then all of those brain chemicals that went up here when you went out to dinner or had sex and they came back, actually, when you plan a vacation, the dopamine goes higher when you plan it than when you're actually on it. So, but you do drugs and shit, boom, way up here, not down here. The baseline come down below. So those chemicals, norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, they're down here. And we keep banging on them. We think that's a solution. Keep banging on them to try to get back up, here. And then pretty soon, all we want to do is get back here. We just want to not go into withdrawal, right? So,
Right.
it's science, and it takes time to heal. And of course,
That makes, you just hit on a topic, the preparation. So I was an math METH user, and the preparation for me, because I was an IV user also. So the preparation for me almost was just as good as the high itself. Uh, it didn't match it, but it was almost just as good because I knew I was going to go get it. And I knew it, and I knew it, and that build up until almost the letdown of the drug. I'll be
right?
honest, was more intense than the actual rug.
No doubt. Yeah, man. So look, a romance with needles and love to cop. It's like exciting, and I plan it, and I want to have an inventory so I don't have to worry. But then I have the inventory, and then I'm like, oh man, do I have enough? Maybe I should go get more. And it's this obsession that we talk about,
The
right?
addiction to the game, we
To
call it
the
the
game, the
game.
excitement of
Yeah,
the lifestyle, right? I
right.
like it. Robert Downey Jr., he said, it's like having a gun in my mouth, and I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so totally, man, the whole activity and yeah, the persona and all this, the copping and all that, and the danger, and yeah, for sure, and finding the hot bag, like oh my god.
Right.
So yeah, that's it produces excitement, and then when you do it, it doesn't lead up to that expectation, especially the tolerance. they're using to not go into withdrawal. And like they say, we're always trying to recreate that good high and find that right mixture to really sail and feel good. But you know, uh, one is not enough. 1,000 is too many. So it's not within the human experience. That's not a sustainable solution to comfort yourself. A lot of people, Wall Street guys, functional cocaine, functional benzos, riding, making tons of money, Adderall, making tons of money. They need to take it so they feel like they can stay on top of their game and soar and fly and be smart. Just like Limitless with Bradley Cooper. You know, he took the pill and he like could learn languages, you know? So it's the same kind of shit, but it's not sustainable because your body will begin to break down and you'll get depressed. And if you might get caught, you might go to jail. Like, you know, we say there's, you go to end up in one of three places. You end up in jail, in the institution, which is the hospital. Those are not, you know, hospital's a good place. Jail's not so good. The third is, you know, on the wrong side of the grass. And then game over. The fun machine is broken, no more fun, and you basically fucking ruin everybody else's lives around you for a period of time. And it's just, it's tragic.
So being in the recovery field, being a recovery coach, what exactly does a recovery coach, a peer recovery specialist do?
Yeah. So to become a certified peer recovery specialist, it varies from state to state. The biggest thing for me was to get out of that abstinence model. Like I always thought, oh man, you know, I don't have an on-off switch, and I just experienced it. I can't smoke a little weed. Look what it turned into. You know, I can't just take one Xanax and relax and go to sleep like most people. I can't do that. So when you learn peer recovery, you learn all these other pathways. MAT, right? And so in AA, they're like, you're on Suboxone, you're getting high, you're on buprenorphine, get out of here, you know? So we use that. It's a miracle. It saves lives, you know? Harm reduction. All right, let's get you off the fentanyl so you don't die. If you want to smoke a little weed and have some beer right now, okay for now. That's harm reduction. So I'm like, what? That's California sober, right? But that's another kind of thing. So that's the difference. And then we don't just learn 12-step, we learn smart recovery, Buddhist recovery, secular recovery, life ring. I mean, there's just a litany of pathways and community support. There's even a meeting for MAT. It's called MARA. There's even a meeting for people who are practicing harm reduction with others who are practicing harm reduction. You talk about your success, your failures. They're marijuana anonymous.org. Beautiful. You know, people, I love to smoke weed, but it's fucking with my psych medication. It's not working anymore. Like, that's a fact, Jack. Or it's not marijuana. It's that it's so strong now. That's the difference. Like you, me, we smoked like some brown weed, you know, that we got from the neighbor. And it was like, I don't know, 5-10% THC. This now the bud, 30%.
I don't know. I was getting like 15, 20, 30% sometimes from the dispensaries.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm from Colorado. We had some good shit, you know, but that's a different story.
Totally. But the vape, 100%, 90%.
Yeah.
Like just fucking blow your mind. And then there's a thing I didn't realize this in my book with one of the stories. We thought this chick, she had an eating disorder because she kept throwing up and she wanted to be, you know, skinny. She had a little body dysmorphia, and she was being treated for that. But none of the doctors said, "Do you smoke weed?" And she said, "Yeah, I smoke every day." We're like, "Dude, you have cannabinoid hyperemesis. That is
the hell is that?
That is a thing where when you smoke too much strong weed, you have uncontrollable nausea and you vomit incessantly." Now, for me, when I was hungover from drinking, I would do bong hits in the morning to reduce my nausea. I love that. You know, I was like, hangover, I don't care. I'm going to do bong hits. I'm going to feel much better.
Say that word again. Cannabinoid what?
Hyperemesis.
So it kind of looks cannabinoid hyperemesis.
It looks kind of like hypermesis. And not to plug my book, But in the back of my book, there's a glossary and resources. It's also on my website, Go Humans. That's my mission. And if you look at resources, they're all there for statewide,
Okay.
nationwide, and it defines all of these things like hyperemesis, And I'm learning every day. I learn from great people. And because I made Addiction Warriors with some of the leading people in the country, sex addiction, gambling addiction, I have no problem picking up the phone and call somebody who's doing a podcast, who's a doctor, who's an addiction doctor. And then they say, Mark, come to the convention with me, talk about peer recovery, and then give these guys access to where they can hire a peer recovery specialist in Kentucky, maybe in their hospital, God forbid, or their practice, or just refer patients to the Peer Recovery Center where there's telephone recovery support, and then there's dedicated coaching where if they have the bandwidth, they will call you 1 to 3 times a week at the time you want and say, hey, Jay, how
Wow.
you doing, man? How's it going? What can I help you with? Oh, you're looking for a job? I have oodles of resources. You're
Wow.
living in your car? I can help you with charitable and no cost solutions for that. So we're like the Google of recovery.
So you're like resource kings or
Resource,
queens.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
And then we learn techniques, motivational interviewing, meet them where they're at, different lexicon, different language. It's alcohol use disorder. You're dysregulated. So it's not just woke. It's like changing the conversation of how you talk to yourself and how you treat yourself. All this foo-foo, self-care, blah, blah, blah. It's good. And I think, we don't say he died by suicide, or we do. We say he died by suicide. It's not he committed suicide, or not that he's crazy. We don't say that. It's science. There's disorders and there are treatments. So I love it. I'm passionate. I'm on fire. I want to go to talk to doctors that know nothing about it because it's the AA model of sponsorship. One person with lived experience helping another is unparalleled. And
Absolutely.
right? Doctor goes in, says, do this, do that. And they're like, yeah, sure, doc. I promise. I promise.
So how do you stop thinking? I know because I just was talking about this earlier to some people, and we were talking about the negative self thoughts that because we tell ourselves the worst things. We wouldn't let anybody else talk to us like we talk to ourselves. The I'm not worth it. I'm not good enough. All that. How do you deal with that in the stop thinking part?
Okay, so again, everybody's different. We're malleable as human beings. We can be deconditioned and reconditioned. Somebody who wants to run a mile, like all of a sudden can run 2 or 3, and then, oh my God, 5 years later, I ran a marathon. Meanwhile, I weighed 300 pounds and I couldn't even walk up the stairs. So we're malleable. And so, 2 things. Jay, set your alarm and everybody out there to go off every day at the same time. Breathe in your belly and have it become a habit. So now you can do it at the supermarket when you're online, and you can thank the lady at the beginning of the line who has all those coupons, and everybody on the line is like, come on, lady, can't you see there's a line here? They're all thinking that, but you're like, yeah, thanks, lady, for the opportunity. Now I'm going to the vagal toning gym and I'm breathing in my belly and I'm doing the reps. Same thing at a red light. Any inconvenience on the phone with customer service, that's a heart attack, right? So you breathe in your belly because stress is being someplace and not wanting to be there. It's wanting to, I can't wait till the day's over. I can't wait till the weekend. Like that's just getting another day older. So how to stop the incessant thinking machine? Well, we can't because we're human. And, we're wired and coded for survival. So we're always thinking. However, I have been trained. I listen to Eckhart Tolle. I'm a big fan of, Buddhism, and Buddha meant awake in Sanskrit. That's all it meant. And at the beginning, he taught suffering and the end of suffering. So that's what we were talking about with the discomfortability. Like all that discomfort you went through, it was good because you evolved and you became the person you were, and you're less uncomfortable with those things anymore. you know? And what they teach is be in the moment, be present, right? How the fuck do you do that, right? Oh, meditate. Yeah, right. I can't sit still for 2 minutes, right? So I used to just say, and there's breath work and all. I do that. I do the breath work. I'm like, just breathe for 1 minute every day. If you want to go to the breath work session and do this fancy stuff, this is nothing fancy. This is just breathe regular in your belly. So now
Almost
you
like, when the, hungry, angry, lonely, tired comes into play, the halt.
yeah, so now you're conditioned. You're hungry, eat something. You're lonely, get online or go outside. You're tired, like that's another thing. Sleep is critical, right? Hungry, angry. If you're angry, so what's that? Anger is fear. So say, what am I afraid of? Why am I so angry? Why do I have the resentment? What am I afraid of? Losing something, having somebody else win. These are all stories we tell ourselves. And everything up until this moment is the way Jay and Mark have conditioned themselves of who they think they are, how their identity. So important to have my identity. I'm a triathlete. It's a tribe, and we're humans. We like tribes. Like I'm a Giant fan. I'm in recovery. That's all. That's all great. But it's still a story, a script, a movie that we've told ourselves our entire lives, and we've conditioned ourselves with that story. And what do we say? Fear is not a fact, right? Fear is false expectations appearing real. Real. Well, that story is not a fact. It's your point of view. You say to people, "What do you think of me?" "Oh man, you're smart, and all this stuff." And you think, I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. My head is as big as a spaceship, And they're like, "No, man, you're getting better. You're more humble." So we don't really see ourselves. We just see reflections of ourselves, and we check in with my sponsor, with my pure. How am I doing? How am I doing? How am I sounding? I don't know. I don't see it. So how to change that conversation? It's a story. It's a movie. Now is now. It's now o'clock. It's not later o'clock. It's not when we finish this podcast. It's not what I'm having for dinner. It's not what I'm watching on TV tonight. It's not like, oh my God, I have a crazy week. What does everybody say? It's been crazy. Well, it's not crazy. You've been crazy, right? So if you can be regulated and calm through a war or the frenzied work pace, you're chill and it's not crazy, right? So between
Absolutely.
the breathing, getting out of your head, dropping everything into your lower body, the thoughts will come. Just go back to your hand on your belly. It's just like meditation. We say, close your eyes. The way I do it is I scan my body. I bring energy to my toes, to my ankles. I scan my whole body. Sometimes I have to start it all over again because I'm just thinking too much. And then I finally calm down. And there's an expression that says, come to your senses, man. That's coming to your senses, And then I just breathe, and the thoughts aren't as abundant anymore. And if they are, what do they say? Let them pass through you. Don't make judgment. They'll come, they'll go. They're just thoughts. They're just a story you're telling yourself. Go back to your belly. Go back to your belly. And that will slow the incessant thinking machine. So do an inventory of yourself. See what you think of yourself. That's the fourth step. It's done in every spiritual discipline. Judaism, it's called the Chesbon Nefesh. It's an accounting of the soul. You write down all the shit you think you are, or how, and then you evaluate it with somebody. And then you go, why do I do that?
Kind
Right?
of like a fourth step to moral inventory.
Fourth and fifth step. That's what it is. And then you identify, why do I feel that way? Well, in AA, there's a fifth column that we fill out. Everything is fear. What did I just say? Everything is because of fear.
Right.
Fear of what? Not being successful, not being good enough, the expectation. My neighbor has a beautiful house in this car. I don't have that. I should have that. It's the American way. I wrote a book because I had multiple myeloma. And I'm in remission. It's a very treatable cancer. But when I was in the hospital getting chemo, followed by 3 months of isolation, I wrote my first book, and I had written movies before. The first book is called The Great American Suburban Experiment. Now, that was a time in the 60s and 70s where consumerism exploded. Everybody wanted more. We were doing all this shit. We're basically ruining the environment. And then later on, now we have to spend all the money we did making it to repair the damage we did and the damage we did to ourselves. Right? I say to people, don't
Right.
work too hard, because when you retire, you're going to spend all the money you made to repair what you did while making it. Right? How crazy is that?
That is
So,
kind of, that's kind of almost backwards thinking, but
no, but that's what recovery teaches us. Like, this is
yes,
not the right way. You can
right.
plan, you can be successful. There's nothing wrong with making money. Just don't be a scumbag about it. So, and help others. That's the deepest form of fulfillment. That's the 12th step. I get to do that every day. The deepest form of fulfillment is helping someone else. It really is. So,
And I found that in my recovery that I tend to help others a lot, and that keeps me accountable. First of all, it keeps me accountable and keeps me wanting to help others, to watch them progress and in their stages of recovery. And but along with that, you got to be pretty mentally capable of doing that, because sometimes you'll care too much, and then things will start to go downhill. What do you do when that starts happening?
well, peer recovery is very insistent on what you just said. So we have boundaries. Now, if you're not a peer recovery specialist and you're just helping someone or sponsoring someone or mentoring someone, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. There's some ground rules, right? Oftentimes, like, people don't like it, but like someone who's relapsed, and it's only because their brain got hijacked and didn't have enough time to heal. It wasn't because you were weak or a fuck up. Nothing to do with that. It's because you didn't allow your sensors, your opioid system, the endocannabinoid system, to re-heal. And you used too soon, right? So take a break, let your brain heal. Do other things that we practice in recovery to learn the skills, to be a skilled human being, to use skilled speech, right? However, parents and whatever, I say, you know what? I think it's time for an agreement, because we don't do tough love anymore. It just handicaps them further. But we do set up boundaries and go, John, man, come on. This is getting a little crazy. You keep stealing from me. We almost had a fire last night because you fell asleep in bed with your cigarette. Like, we love you, but you need your brain to heal. Especially when you're 24 years old, your brain hasn't matured, right? Like, throw out, at that point, you're in arrested development. You don't learn coping skills or feelings or anything. Women to mature faster. So I say, I'm a proponent. All right, John, let's sit down and make an agreement. What do you think you should do to be in recovery? You make it their idea, and you start putting it on paper. And you say, is that manageable for you? Can you do that? Yeah. Can you come home before 10 every night? I can do that. Can you take your antabuse every day, or make sure you take your Suboxone, or go for your Sublocade shot? I can do that. Good. So it's his idea, his or her idea. You write it out, you type it out, you all sign it. We'll keep a copy, and then you put it up on the fridge or wherever. And like you
So it's
stick
almost like a contract with yourself, like an accountability contract.
totally. And it's not in the air, it's not in the wind, it's on paper, the virtue of the paper, just like the inventory of yourself. Don't just talk about it, write it down. And every spiritual discipline for the time of mankind has been doing that. And so you have to have boundaries. Like, dude, if I'm working harder than you, that's not good. You know, if you're vampirish and you're sucking my blood, then I'm rowing the boat. You should be rowing the boat. You know, you're taking
Agreed.
me down with the ship. It's not going to work for you or for me. So like, only like, if unless you're in jail or whatever and you need to call me in the middle of the night, call me. But if you're not bloody in the hospital or in jail, don't call me in the middle of the night, you know? But everybody's different. So I think that agreement has to come from each other. And peer recovery, this may blow your mind, William White and CCAR and how it was developed, the peer experience, the peer is supposed to experience just as much as the participant and get the same amount. And that's part of it.
Wow.
And that's how it works. I wrote about it in my book. I had it vetted because I sent it to people who, like the grandfather of peer recovery in New Jersey and other people, and then they vetted it. They gave me suggestions and all sorts of things. So it really went through the mill approval, and it's basically just 10 stories, like in NA and AA especially. They have stories at the end of the 164 pages, which is the how-to, like personal accounts, doctors, lawyers, accountants, all walks of life. Same thing, but it's not 1940, it's 2025. So the menu is much greater of the shit you can take. Nitazine, 7-OH, I mean, THCP, the list just goes on and on. You know, Amazon sells big canisters of what we used to call whippets. It's nitrous oxide.
Nitrous oxide, yeah.
Right, it's supposed
An
to be
air
used,
duster, yeah.
yeah, it's supposed to be used for whipped cream, right, when baking. Well, this shit says to the moon on Amazon. Absolute, absolute, like an absolute bottle, absolute gas or whatever it is. And I wrote a letter to Amazon. I was like, you're not selling this for whipped cream, dudes. This is clearly for people to get high. And they sell that in smoke shops too. And boy, did their lawyers hit me over the head with a sledgehammer. Like, I got more legal letters than you can imagine. I was like,
oh, I believe that.
Yeah, I was like, you know, they were like, this information, all this bullshit, right? I knew that was going to happen, but I tried, you know? So I think you have to have an understanding. So, and it's self-preservation, because what did they say? Put your air mask on first, right?
So what inspired you to write the book?
Like, you may be looking for a deep answer, Jay, but when I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, I was deathly afraid of having nothing to do. So when I went into the hospital and I started to get sick from chemo, I got up every morning. I couldn't sleep, and I just wrote, because I can write. I have that skill, you know. And I wrote The Great American Suburban Experiment, which is basically my experience within that paradigm of the society of more. Right? My parents sent me to Be Somebody training, you know, because I grew up with a Jappy family in Essex County, and they expected a lot. There was, you need to be a doctor and a lawyer, and you're going to go to this college,
Right?
because I need to put the decal on my car so everybody thinks I'm great, right?
Right.
So, and I don't know if that's a good thing to do, you know. There should be a balance, but it served me because I had a nice career in the movie business, but it did a disservice in terms of my expectation, my hubris, my ego, you know? And then I medicated because I wanted to be better than better and always on top of my game. And so, you know, so I don't know. My parents were great. They gave me everything. It was beautiful, but they did the best that they could. We always say that, but we're always learning, you know? Like, if a kid says, I'm afraid or I'm nervous, you say, good, it's okay to be afraid. Not like, you have no reason to be afraid, right? Or what are you afraid of? That's ridiculous, you know, because you want them to feel the feelings. And if they fail, let them fail. Let them feel frustrated. Let them feel terrible, because then they develop coping skills to deal with that. I never developed those, you know? So, you know, until I got clean and sober, and it took years, because they say you have arrested development. The year you started using, age 12, 13, you have that emotional operating system when you're 25, 30, 35, when you get sober, right?
You know, I've heard that. And what does that exactly mean, arrested development?
So we know that the brain matures at the end of adolescence into your mid-20s, right? So when we're young, we're coded for invincibility, right? Our brain is not mature. Our choices, our executive decision making, that's the frontal brain, is not fully developed. So we make wild choices. We jump off cliffs, we do all sorts of shit, because we're wired to
We
do
try
that.
new things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a risk. It's a buzz. Like, if you can't do it, I can do it. All that shit, right? And so we do that. And God willing, or whatever, the universe, the infinite willing, we don't kill ourselves or break things or end up in a wheelchair with no legs the rest of our life. But so that brain, it begins to form the executive decision for men and boys like ages 25, 26. It might be getting lower now. I don't know. And women, it's faster, or actually men, they say it's even more, like 28, 29, I should say. I misspoke. And then the women are like 24, 25. In Judaism, girls get bat mitzvah at age 12. That's their
Wow.
maturation. And guys get bar mitzvah at 13 because they're not as mature. And God love women. Like, they're naturally spiritual. They're just, I mean, I they kind of are more adept at being spiritual, being sensitive.
Right.
You
They're
so
more of a
that's
spiritual being. I agree with that.
right. They give birth, so you
Well,
couldn't
they
get
they
any more.
have they deal with a different set of feelings. I think they're more emotionally, I would say, regulated, but I'm not going to say unstable, because I know a lot of them that are unstable. But I'm just going to say emotionally regulated, emotionally mature than men.
They talk
You know.
about it all the time. That all that what we think is sort of like nonsense. They talk about it with their friends and they come up with
Yes.
solutions. And again, everybody's different. So some may be a little less regulated. So there's up regulation, which means you can arise to the situation, you can rise to the situation. And then there's dysregulated, which is you're depressed, you can't deal. And so to make a long story short, I would sit at the typewriter or this laptop, and I would write, and I just kept writing.
Okay.
It just came out of me because it was my story. It was easy to tell. And then I had to do it again as course of a tandem treatment, just to do it, not because I relapsed or you know yeah, or had a relapse. And then I wrote the second one because I felt like, and I got permission from people to tell their story. They wanted me to, and their modern stories about all the modern menu of things you can get high from, escape from, gambling, sex, tech, everything, food.
Electronics, the list goes on as we start new things. The list just
Yeah,
continues to get longer of what we can be addicted to.
yeah. This is
Yeah.
cocaine, right? Cocaine.
Yeah.
So
For real.
you're in your you're in your
Yeah.
doctor's office, right? It's a time to relax and practice your breathing. No, I want more stimulation. And now
Right.
I'm more stimulated. I'm more amped and more amped. It's like we haven't learned to be. And then they say that in a lot of recovery, we're human doers. We're not human beings,
Nah, I've heard that.
right?
I've heard that a few times. So as we're coming to the end of our podcast here, at the end of our hour, uh, anybody out there listening that's struggling maybe with addiction, that might be struggling with in their recovery or very early in the recovery or even long-term recovery, what do you want them to pick up from this conversation? And after that, tell me where I'm supposed to get your book.
Yeah, my book's on Amazon. Both of them are.
Okay.
And so anybody listening across the country or in New Jersey or wherever, in New Jersey, there's a free peer recovery center in every county in New Jersey. Every county has one. You don't have to go there. Just call them, make a contact. It's free therapy. It's a free friend, right? That's what I want you to take away. And if you're in Connecticut or in Virginia or in Texas, you can go to go-humans.com, go-humans.com, and look for the resources. And it's all there. It's all, and in the back of the book, all the glossary of these wild terms and things we've talked about, hyperemesis, and a state-by-state peer recovery contact. And just click on it and call them up. and say, what's the deal in our state? You know, how can I get access? How can I become one? You know, it's all that. So that's what I hope they'll take away, that this is a very valuable, effective way for one to practice recovery.
So now the last thing part was, what do you want people to take away from this conversation?
Well, just that. And I'm hoping, that learning that it's all about becoming more comfortable with discomfort. Discomfort is good. Consider it good and an opportunity. All bumps in the road, opportunity to elevate it, make it positive, right? That's becoming more comfortable with discomfort.
I agree. I like to say, don't let your comfort zone become your prison. Because
That's it, dude.
it's true. We get comfortable. We're not likely to get outside of our comfort zone. It becomes a self-inflicted prison, and then you're not really living life to your full potential, whatever
Yeah,
you want to do.
all you're doing is getting another day older. How boring
So
is
yeah,
that?
it's true. Get outside, go do something. Go do something that makes you uncomfortable. Go do something that gives you some anxiety. You know,
Totally. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's so true. It's sometimes hard to get out there because we're still in our heads, being judged, it's our own backwards thinking. Our own toxic traits. The
yeah. If
thinking.
you're afraid of being social, just set foot in a coffee shop.
Go to
Go,
Walmart.
just do anything. Just like we say, you can't think yourself into right action, but you can
Right.
act yourself into
Into
right.
right thinking.
And just act as if, and the mind will follow. It's a fact,
Well,
Jack.
it is a fact, Jack. I agree with that. Well, Mark, I appreciate you coming on the show. You don't know how much that is going to help somebody that needed to hear this conversation. So thank you. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and scheduling.
Jay, I
And
just
for
wanted to say
everybody,
that people out there may be wondering why I look purple and everything is purple, right? What's up with that? Well, purple is the color of recovery, right?
yes,
Sure,
sir.
and healing and good things. So maybe you'll remember that too. Mark was a purple.
Purple is the color of recovery. Do not forget that. When you see a purple ribbon, that means somebody's in recovery, you know?
Right on.
And we got a recovery awareness month coming up here soon, I think towards the end of the year, actually. And so be looking for those purple ribbons. That might be somebody that could have been struggling and has walked through hell to start living life again. Just know
Totally.
that. And
Totally.
keep rocking your recovery. Until next time, I'm
Rock on.
Jay. That's Mark. And we'll talk to you later.